What's happening, guys? Concrete Breakdowns coming at you with a new Deathmatch video. Charlie Z versus Rocus. Help out the algorithm by commenting, liking and subscribing. Let's do this!
224, no, happy May 3rd, retard haters. I just beat the shit out of a US Marine. I won on points.
Alright, let's get these introductions out of the way. Charlie Zelenov is an internet character, I guess, who has made quite a name for himself in the YouTube and fighting community. Charlie has been boasting about his great boxing record and superb boxing skills online for years, while not actually having either of the two. And that would be fine, more or less, if not for the fact that Charlie Z actually challenges random gym goers to live sparring matches and proceeds to attempt to punch them unconscious. Yeah, it's not great. People who get sucked into this scam of Charlie are usually left scratching their head what the hell happened while Charlie is raising his arms in victory. Now, I've been trying to figure out for a long time how much of this behavior is purposely trolling, some kind of disturbed clout chasing, and how much of it is an actual mental disorder. You see, when I'm watching Charlie Z videos, I am entertained by him. There's always this part of me hoping on Charlie getting what he deserves. But there's a less funny, darker side to all this when you consider these are actual assaults, the probable mental issues of Zelenov and the consequences of this behavior. He's the punchline of many of our jokes, but I didn't want to make a video about this guy without mentioning there's likely mental health issues in play here. Take that for what you will. Charlie's opponent in this deathmatch is Rokas from Martial Arts Journey, a former Aikido teacher with 14 years of experience who has run his own Aikido dojo. Rokas realized that practicing Aikido was actually not effectively helping him reach his goal of being able to defend himself. So Rokas started pressure testing his Aikido skills and tried to become an effective martial artist this way. But eventually realized he was going about it the wrong way, gave up on Aikido and started training MMA, eventually even competing in an actual mixed martial arts fight. What makes Rokas' story so unique is that he's a great YouTuber and ran a YouTube channel from the start of his journey, capturing his growth and sharing his progress with the martial arts community. Rokas being brutally honest, questioning himself and making such a 180 while he was so deeply entrenched in Aikido before, inspired a lot of people, and I'm one of those people. I think Rokas is a really interesting guy, and since I started trying to build a martial arts YouTube channel myself, my respect for the guy has only grown. He's really good at what he does. That said, I don't think everything Rokas touches turns into gold. It's kind of a similar thing to what Joe Rogan has going on. Like any young dude into MMA, I love Rogan. And when Rogan is interviewing experts in their field from a place of humble curiosity, he's flat out one of the best interviewers in the world. But when Rogan himself is taking on the role of expert in a certain field, he's definitely more prone to being biased and making mistakes. Rokas has a similar polarity in my opinion. When Rokas is on a journey putting himself out there and objectively questioning things, when he's taking us with him exploring, he's such a force and tremendously interesting. When Rokas is taking on the role of critical thinking expert, trying to tell us how objective thinking works, he's a lot less interesting. It seems Rokas is coming to understand that himself more and more though. I definitely recommend subscribing to his channel if you aren't already. He's probably the kindest, most relatable person in the space he's occupying, and has a steady stream of high quality content going on. Alright, so the pinnacle of combat sports delusion is taking on the symbol of objective thinking in martial arts. Usually in these deathmatches I pit these fighters in the fictional Mortal Kombat fight, but Charlie Z comes rolling in with his own scenario ready to go. Charlie challenges Rokas to a light spar, uncorks a sucker punch, and a fight to the death starts from that point. Rokas is equipped with MMA gloves in this scenario.
Round 1 fight.
We'll now dive into both fighters' habits, attributes and skills, as there are basically 3 versions of Rokas: Aikido Rokas, Rokas functionalizing his Aikido, and Rokas as an MMA fighter. We'll be covering all 3 versions. We'll select a winner for each matchup with the respective version of Rokas. So let's first get some of the obvious points about Charlie as a fighter out of the way. Charlie is not exactly GOAT material, and isn't even at the level of boxing competency of a mediocre amateur at that. Charlie's not technically refined and struggles to protect himself against people without any boxing experience at all. If Charlie's initial rush of sucker punching with a surprising intensity fails, he's frequently seen slowly losing confidence until he either calls a timeout or literally runs away from the opponent. So the guy does not exactly have the heart of a fighter. But now we'll get into what I think is the most fun part of this video. Let's play devil's advocate, give credit where credit's due, and look at some of Charlie's strengths. You can't go around sparring people for years without picking up some tricks after all. Charlie is an orthodox boxer walking around at 5'9", 76 kilograms. After convincing people they are about to engage in a light spar, Charlie almost universally opens up with the same combination, a wide left hook followed by a wide overhand, often doubling or even tripling up in this combination, swarming forward with hooks while neglecting his own guard. Charlie can mostly get away with this because of the element of surprise and the level of opposition he's facing. But this combination serves Charlie well in more ways than one. As an orthodox fighter, the opening left hook is a less telegraphed shot than the right hand, and closer to the target. That first left hand often lands pretty clean and puts opponents/victims in a state of panic. In this defensive state of panic, people often put their hands out in front of them, reaching and try to back out of punching range. Charlie's forward swarm makes perfect use of this, closing the distance faster than the opponents can back up and punching around the opponent's arms with his wide, high velocity punches. And that is something to be noted. Through many years of clocking people with punches, Charlie has developed an understanding of the range he needs to be in to hurt people. The sucker punching surprise factor is not as egregious in every video, but even sparring sessions that are more fair play, it's definitely notable that Charlie usually is the scarier puncher. While the opponents new to boxing are basically pumping out their arms at the air, Charlie is actually stepping in and landing some mean shots. This might not be as obvious to people who don't participate in boxing sparring, but actually connecting punches at all is a skill. A skill Charlie has admittedly developed to a further degree than most of his untrained opponents. Alright, what else does Charlie do well? I like the extension on Charlie's jabs. Charlie has a pretty lanky frame and he does make full use of his range. Ooh, this left hook of the jab is really pretty. Charlie's mechanics on his hooks are pretty good in general. He can definitely generate the force required to hurt people. I do also like the body jabs Charlie throws out there. After presenting yourself as such a forward swarming headhunter, these body jabs are easy pickings. So yeah, all in all, in short bursts of offense, Charlie is a pretty dangerous guy, with more boxing skill than the average guy walking the streets. Bit of a side note, this has little to do with the matchup with Rocus, but Charlie is also surprisingly good at self-defense. I mean, if your goal is being a horrible weasel of a person who tries to get away with as much assaults as possible, Charlie is actually doing a pretty good job. The guy has the biggest target on his back, rightfully so, but he always manages to de-escalate or run away from situations right before he gets actually seriously hurt. Take this guy attacking Charlie for example. Charlie gets totally caught off guard here, squares up anyway and defends himself, makes a run for it and finds a way for the staff of a random fast food restaurant to protect him. It might not be something to take great pride in, but the dude got home safe that day. Remember, we're putting the fighting skills of Charlie against those of Rocus. Keep in mind that Charlie will be attacking Rocus in the same way he usually does, under the guise of a light spar. The only difference being in this deathmatch is that neither party will have the option to run away from the fight.
Fatality.
So the first version of Rocus we'll be discussing is the one where the winner of the fight is the most obvious, MMA Rocus. After losing confidence in the effectiveness of Aikido, Rocus picked up MMA. But he did not just took half measures and signed up for a weekly MMA class at the gym in the mall. Rocus competed in BJJ, trained extensively at SBG and had an actual MMA fight. Rocus built himself into a well-rounded MMA fighter. A boxing-focused style, the guy has some strong legs under him, good footwork. Focus on landing straight shots. A solid double leg. Positionally and physically strong in the grappling. This version of Rocus definitely has the composure to receive Charlie's initial flurry and return fire. I'm confident in Rocus' skills winning this fight striking, but with Charlie being practically defensive grappling, choking him out would be the path of least resistance. MMA Rocus takes this one in a blowout. Okay, we're moving on to Aikido Rocus, the version of Rocus that ran his Aikido dojo and never really trained with resisting opponents. Your mind could wonder about how Rocus' Aikido matches up against Charlie's boxing, but I actually don't think that's very relevant. Let's get back to MMA Rocus for a moment. Rocus is shown to be an athletic dude and walks around at 85 kilograms, 191 centimeters. Rocus is a big Lithuanian, capable of pretty athletic feats and has built up his strength over the years. Going by all the instances captured on camera of Charlie being muscled around by guys, there's an argument to be made that Rocus wouldn't even need his MMA skills to beat Charlie. I'd give Rocus in an alternate universe where he had his current physique, but never took part in any martial arts, still a good chance of beating Charlie in this deathmatch. So why is it that a fit Rocus could possibly beat Charlie on athleticism and physical pressure alone, but it's not clear that the Rocus who has been training Aikido for 14 years will win? Well, first of all, Aikido Rocus is not at the same level of fitness at all. Rocus at this time was following a strict low-calorie diet. This depriving of nutrients left Rocus in a pretty famished state. Body weight is a big deal in fighting anyway, but the diminishing effect such a diet has on your musculature and testosterone levels is to be noted. Something especially relevant in this matchup is the diminished strength and musculature around the neck. Rocus is basically being surprise attacked here, and I'm not sure if he's in great shape to withstand the punishment. In the sparring footage of the original Aikido vs MMA video, we see Rocus responding to striking pressure. His gem of a sparring partner is being really kind here, going nice and light. We see Rocus reaching for shots and being uncomfortable despite the light amount of pressure being applied. Rocus simply hadn't developed any skills in the striking realm at this point. And that's kind of what this matchup boils down to. The question isn't how Aikido would fare against boxing, which by the way in most cases wouldn't be great. The question is how a malnourished person who doesn't have any striking experience will fare against the assault from a decently capable puncher. I can definitely see with him at the time being such a pacifist, and with him believing his Aikido to work in unrealistic ways. Rocus not responding well to the assault from Charlie, and eventually the damage piling up to a point he gets overwhelmed. Charlie will be pushed to exert himself but edges out the win here. Okay, last up is the version of Rocus in between his transition from aikidoka to MMA fighter. Rocus for a period tried to functionalize his Aikido, trained with live resisting partners, did some striking and trained in BJJ. Now Rocus admits himself that spending time trying to save and functionalize his Aikido was not an efficient way to spend his time. But even though his training might have not been the most efficient, Rocus did spend time actually playing around with striking and grappling. And when you're at the start of a learning curve like that, a little training can have massive results. Charlie has shown a complete lack of understanding of takedown defense and grappling in general, while Rocus' understanding of grappling has increased tenfold at this point. The increased training intensity was one of the first steps to building Rocus' physique, and Rocus' attempts to weave striking in his training schedule has conditioned him more to the stress of taking punches.
Outstanding.
Rocus is getting a W here, taking home 2 wins out of 3. Basically any version of Rocus that isn't starving himself and isn't afraid to take punches beats the shit out of Charlie, showing the effectiveness of taking a critical look in the mirror versus burying your head in the sand. So all in all, this was pretty fun. I ran into some interesting bits in this video. I think the question, would I do fine if I got surprise attacked by a guy like Charlie Z, could work as somewhat of a benchmark of martial arts competency. And going over Rocus' chances made me appreciate that you're probably better off lifting weights and roughhousing with your friends than doing a static martial art with no resistance when it comes to preparing you for a self-defense situation. Steak and deadlifts over Aikido, come at me. I try not to shit specifically on Aikido itself during the video because I do appreciate certain parts of it, and the nuanced layered tangents about what parts and ideas are non-viable would distract from the video. It's no secret to me there are capable martial artists out there who consider themselves aikidoka. But if you feel offended anyway and want to dump a bunch of Japanese words in the comment section, along with your thoughts on how a fight between you and Charlie would go, please do so, I can definitely use the algorithmic support. This was Concrete Breakdowns. Subscribe for more deathmatches and unique breakdown content. Thanks for watching.